Welcome back to another salvage story where we give you an in-depth look at the performance auto salvage industry and let you know in the end how much money we made or lost on each car. What we have here is one of the cheapest salvage story vehicles yet, a special edition Subaru BRZ TS that costs us a whopping $5,033. But the returning viewers know it's all about how much money and parts we can pull out of this thing. And let me tell you, there's a lot in this car, but I'm not here just to tell you, I'm here to show you. That ain't going anywhere. To answer your questions in the order that you have them, yes, I did just cut a hole in a rubber intake tube to custom mount a MAF sensor. Yes, I did reuse a 3-inch section of exhaust from a Camaro Z01 that we happen to be taking apart right now to be repurposed for an intake pipe. Yes, this intake filter does indeed spin. And the reason for that is that I believe that this car can be started and driven. Not very fast and not very far, but it is always best for us to evaluate the conditions of the parts, specifically the driveline components, if we can move the car under its own power. We are going to have to get a manifold pressure sensor here because we don't have one of these in inventory. And then we also need to top it off on oil because it looks like they put some sort of weird drain plug on this car and it happens to be leaking. We got our hands on our replacement sensor here. These things, OEM, the replacement for these is more than $200, which is pretty darn crazy. I went ahead and hopped on eBay Motors, found a good replacement one for about 15 bucks. So much of this car's success, like many others that come through the shop, hinges on whether it actually runs and drives. If we have to do a motor teardown on it, if there's some sort of internal damage, that is going to significantly affect how much money we can make on this car. And if this thing doesn't end up on the newly set up Salvage Story high scoreboard in the office, Carrington will never let me hear the end of it. So I need everyone to cross fingers, toes. Let's hope this thing starts. Sound too bad? Oh. That's what it was. Okay. Oh, there we go. Wedge her up there real nice. Oh, she's quiet now. So it runs, it sounds pretty darn good, to be completely honest, for being the first time it's been started in probably several months. But that's really only half the battle here, because I want to drive this car. Really, the only problems are that I've only really looked underneath of it to diagnose that the oil leak was coming from the drain bolt. The suspension looks fine. Both the wheels are pointed in the same direction. It seems to steer the tires. It doesn't have a windshield. So, a little bit sketchy. Really what I need is like a test dummy. But who around here is stupid enough to want to do that? Carrington. I think it's only fitting, since Salvage Stories are normally your thing, that you get the privilege. No. I misspoke. The honor of being the first person to drive the BRZ.
Honor?
Yes.
It's a 2-liter Subaru with no turbo.
So, are you in?
I think that car right there is going to be faster than it. I'll drive it. I'll happily drive it. Whatever.
All right,
drive it.
go get your helmet.
What?
Yeah, you're going to need a helmet.
That's weird. And concerning as well.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Needs more power. Otherwise, it's not that bad. It actually feels kind of like nice and stiff. I thought I was going to hate it. I really don't hate it that much. As far as, yeah, other than that. But, that's, you know, it is what it is. It's a race car. So
Good thorough test?
Yeah, it actually feels pretty good. I don't really know the difference between, you know, the TS, the performance pack, all that stuff, because I'm not a 16-year-old vape enthusiast. But it does feel like a nice tight car. I actually kind of like it, giving it, you know, a little clutch kick there. It feels good. It feels tight. It needs like 3 or 4 times the horsepower, but otherwise we're good.
You heard the man. Carrington gave it his seal of approval. It has been through a thorough test drive. There's no rebuttals, Carrington. You said what you said, okay? You said what you said, Carrington. Now the only thing that's left to do is go ahead and get this thing apart, and we're going to find out where it stands in the grand scheme of things with the other Salvage Story vehicles. It ran, it drove, but it has to pass a leak down test to get the final seal of approval. None of it matters up until this point if it fails the leak down test. We're going to go ahead, see how it does, get the interior apart, and then it's on to Fernando to do his thing in the photo department.
7.
All right. Off to a good start. 5. That's really strong. 3. Wow. It's official, baby. Calling it now. She's going to be on the Salvage Story high scoreboard. Now that we have everything laid out and organized, you can get an idea of exactly how many parts this car actually produced. Fernando's over here cleaning some stuff up a little bit.
Getting ready.
What do you think? Are you impressed?
So to be honest with you, I'm impressed how rare these parts are. I've never seen it before.
There are a couple TS only parts in this pile right here. We haven't really talked about a lot of them yet, so let's highlight a couple. First thing up, we have the STI springs with the SOX dampeners on them. There are other models that come with similar suspensions to this, but the TS is the only one with this actual configuration. The Brembos are another piece that is special to the TS and the performance models, but that's the only way that you're going to get them. And then we have a couple aftermarket parts that are thrown in. These are the rear lower control arms. We also had upgraded front lower control arms. A couple other pieces over here. Catch can. These are TS specific. They are STI, I guess, strut tower dampers. They're actually kind of interesting. They have a flexible joint in there. The rear differential on the 2018 Plus is also a sought after piece. These are, I believe the main difference is that these are LSD, where the earlier ones aren't. And fun fact, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is the IS300s that this is a bolt-in rear differential upgrade option.
Yes,
It
is.
Fernando already knows. The interior is really where we get the special pieces. You can see the trim, the armrest trim, the red stitch on the speaker, and then also the knee panels. It's found in other performance models also. But the actual red stitching here with the red, the Alcantara top half, I believe is only in the TS's. Then you get into some of the fun stuff. STI engine start button, OEM headlights, taillights, those are the same as the performance models. You get the upgraded trim on this car, which comes with the piano black around the window switches, around the HVAC controls, around the radio. You get the frameless rear mirror. This one is much, much bigger. You can see it's got the essentially like the home link type stuff there. That's not what it's called in these, I don't think, but I could be wrong. And then one of the cool pieces, the STI logoed gauge cluster. We have never had one of these before because we've never had a TS before. And then the main one over here, which is still yet to be photoed, the motor itself that came back with a very, very healthy leak down. We haven't done one of these in a while, so I am very, very curious how much these motors are pulling now, because this is the most sought after version. It has the red intake manifold, which is the highest configuration, and it is the 2018 and newer, which again is the most sought after and most valuable. All right, man, you ready to do your thing?
Yeah.
All right, get to it. Now it is time for the moment of truth. We have Carrington here so I can rub his nose in it the second that we find out how good this car actually did.
I mean, I've found out how good this car did as I was listing the parts. And 10 parts in, once I saw all the aftermarket stuff and all the kind of special stuff the car had, I knew we were in for a good one. And though I knew we were in for a good car, I didn't know how good it was going to be. 99 parts, that's a lot of parts. There were a couple different reasons for this, which we'll get into later, but I was even more surprised to see $25,156. So good for this car. I find it hard to be mad. Originally, I didn't really want to buy this car because, you know, it's a 180 horsepower Subaru, but I'm glad we did. I think Dalt was right on this one.
You just saw the screenshots of the text messages of me realizing the value off the bat, and now it's time to show you.
I do have to give credit where credit is due. As a, you know, enthusiast of absolute junk, like the Nissan Juke, that's well established that he likes junk. He has an eye for it, and it did work out in this case.
All right, so diving into the actual numbers here, you can see the motor is the top dog out of all the parts that we have there. $4,999 price tag on it is maybe a tad bit high, but there are going to be very little of them coming through this shop that is just above maybe where the market has proven these are going to sell at, and being maybe the best example of one that we're going to get anytime in the near future. We're going to go ahead and just ask a little bit of money for that. And it being tested, proven in this video, I think only aids our chances in getting that much money for this motor.
If we have to sit on it a little bit, we'll sit on it a little bit. No big deal, because like he said, we're not going to get 10 more of them coming in the door tomorrow. So I promise you we're not buying. We did just buy one more of these, so never mind.
He bought it. I didn't have anything to do with it. He bought it.
Mine has a turbo.
It does have a turbo. The spoiler we knew was going to be high value too, and Carrington and I have differing opinions on this. I was kind of surprised at the value in a good way. I thought that it was pretty good money at $2,800. We left it attached to the trunk. That way somebody doesn't have to drill holes. There's also a little bit of added value there with the trunk filler panel. Those are like $150 piece that we normally sell very, very quickly. So all of it bundled together for $2,800. I thought that was pretty good money for it, but Carrington kind of had a different thought process on it.
So I priced that really, really close to new pricing. The trunk makes up a little bit, but that's not what we're worried about here. That spoiler new from Subaru is only like $3 grand, which is shocking to me. It's a dry carbon spoiler. If you were buying a similar piece from Chevy, it's going to be twice, 3 times that price.
One other bright spot for this TS that is not TS specific though is the Brembos. You can get these on all of the 2018, or actually 2017 and newer performance models. So like the Series Yellows, they all come with them. But this is a good, valuable option that sells very, very quickly. We have them priced at $2,000. We also have some of the separate components that can go with them, which are the
rear hubs,
the backing plates for the front mounts. All of those parts are not necessarily needed, but you can do that if you want to just make it a complete bolt-in swap. One that I was super excited to see where the value was going to lie on them is these TS seats. And luckily, I've mentioned in some of these videos before that Alex and I used to own a custom upholstery shop. Alex is still pretty handy on the sewing machine, and we have spare airbags and seat foam that we've kept when we used to do a lot of these cars years and years ago. So we went ahead and repaired the passenger seat because it did blow the airbag. Now it is good as new, and we can list these for essentially what should be about top dollar. $1,300 for a set of BRZ seats is pretty darn good money, but there are probably virtually no listings of these.
So that is correct, and this one is a tough one. You have two options here. You either list them cheap and try to move them, and by cheap, I mean on a set of seats like this, $750. Or you ask top dollar. I'm confident that we will sit on these seats for a while, maybe a year. They could be here 2 years from now. We've had premium BRZ interiors like the Series Yellow, which is kind of a cool setup. It's different than this. It's yellow, if you could imagine that. They have sat for a very long time at this shop. So this is one of the parts that may provide value way down the road, but if we just stick to our number there, I think it'll eventually sell.
We did end up with a good set of wheels out of this car. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of damage, really nothing major, but these wheels were very, very straight the entire set. The only reason that we didn't leave them with the Michelin tires mounted is because one of the front tires had very, very minimal sidewall damage, which we don't like to mess with whatsoever. But the front also had some camber wear. So we went ahead and just dismounted the tires. We did list the rear tires for sale as a pair, but the rims themselves, the wheels, is the really kind of one of the shining spots of this car. These are a brand that Carrington knows very well.
I have the same brand on my Porsche. These are kind of their budget, I guess, entry level, if you call it, wheels. Maybe it's the fact that they're a cheaper style, or maybe it's the fact that they're so tiny, being 17x9. But these guys, brand new, are only $1,200. Now, they are back ordered. They're a little hard to get, so I felt confident in pricing these at $1,000, even though that's pretty close to new. Apex Race Engineering, awesome, awesome track wheels. So I think it's super likely that somebody picks these up for a track car.
Now we're going to get into some cool TS specific parts that a lot of this stuff we've never had in the shop before. The first one being the gauge cluster. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to just rare, JDM goodies. This kind of falls into that category for me, where even though it's a USDM car, the only way to get this gauge cluster, I would assume, is in a TS model car. So there have to be a very limited amount of these out there, period. And then on the used market, there have to be virtually none.
This is another one. It's a shot in the dark. It may take a while, but it is an awesome cluster. I, just like Dalt, love this kind of stuff. STI, Nizzo, anything rare and cool and unique. Honestly, this is something that I would like to keep and just stick on a shelf because I think it's awesome. But I doubled the price if we have one of these digital gauge clusters that did not have the STI logo on it. It'd be $400. Doubled it up, put it a little higher than the one singular other one that's out there. And I do think it will sell. Though, like the seats, it's going to take a special person and may sit for a while.
We've already talked about the STI suspension on this car when we were going through the photo area, but we didn't really touch on some of these cool little dampers that are added on that, based on Carrington's research, have a really good chance of selling pretty darn quickly.
That they do, and I was surprised at that. It did take a little searching to figure out what these were called so I could accurately describe them. This one, as you see in the title there, is the STI Flexible Draw Stiffener. I don't know what that means. I truly do not. But fortunately, you see these trading on the forums for $250, no problem. You can get these new. I don't recall exactly how much, somewhere in the $300 to $400 range. I listed it right at $3, and I think it'll sell pretty quickly.
One of the last little pieces here that we're going to touch on that is specific to this TS is the STI engine start button. These red engine start buttons we have seen in other models.
2015 Series Blue.
These are relatively rare. They are very sought after. They sell quickly. It's kind of like the button you want in your BRZ for your start button. So this one, we can command a little bit of money, $150, but I have to imagine that it will sell pretty quickly.
It will. This will be gone. I would place a wager that this will be gone within 14 days. I think it's just one of those things. It's such a hot item because if you're going to be starting up a 180 horsepower car, like, you really want it to feel a little fancy. Just hitting that red button with the STI logo on it just for a minute until you hear that really, breathless engine start up, makes you feel like you're starting something special.
As we keep scrolling, you can see just a lot of run-of-the-mill type of parts, but this is where you get the volume that's going to ultimately add up to dollars on the back end of this car, where a lot of these little parts, kind of maybe even oddball in some instances, ultimately will just add value to this car.
Spot on with everything he just said. This car was aided so much by one specific factor, and that's that we don't do that many of them. That greatly increased the number of parts we were able to keep and the value of the car. But we'll get into that a little more in depth here when we do the breakdown.
Well, I guess that's the perfect segue to do the breakdown.
Okay, breakdown time. Let's go.
So Fernando's a resident hype man here around the shop, and I think he's going to be very excited about these numbers. I wanted to bring him in for this part because he was equally as excited about us doing the TS in general. Like we just mentioned about rare JDM stuff, he is also into just the rare kind of oddball type stuff, and that's what this entire car is. It's not very common. So for the numbers, I told you at the beginning of the video, $5,053 is what this car cost us. It was at a local lot, DC, one of the logistically closest lots to us that we can buy from. For that reason, car shipping, $125. Wow. That's as cheap as we can get it here. It's just that simple. Next up, labor charges. Carrington shot a little bit high on this, I feel like, but I'm going to give him, you know, the benefit of the doubt given his experience in the Salvage Story series. He said $1,000 for labor.
So this is going to be the segment of the video, this is why I grabbed the chair, where he constantly tries to argue the numbers to boost his car up the ranking, but we're not going to let it happen. Lately, labor's been about $750. That's been on cars that, you know, I've been taking apart that have produced maybe 60, 50, 70-ish parts. I don't know why I went in that order, but most of those have been about $750. It's less to ship, it's less the photo, right, Fernando? See,
exactly.
he agrees. So this one being 99 parts, it just jacks it up. Frankly, it probably should have been more like 1,500, but we went with 1,000 because I did want to hear whatever he's about to say.
See, we're going right to the source here because Fernando just photoed this car. How difficult was it to photo this car?
So it wasn't difficult because I know the parts, but it was a lot of parts.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So a little bit of credit to what Carrington's saying there. Okay.
And the car was in good condition.
The shipping expense for this car, I almost said 3,000. I should have BS'd you on that one and got it lower. $3,500, and we did go pretty in depth with the breakdown on the shipping charge here to make sure it's as accurate, maybe as it's ever been here on a Salvage Story.
That is true. It is far and away the most accurate. We went kind of piece by piece, loosely, discuss the stuff that really costs a lot of money. Typically, I just kind of eyeball it. I have a good sense of what stuff costs. But I feel like I needed to be able to prove these numbers and back these numbers up in case I heard anything from this guy. A couple things I will note specifically. You've heard me say before, some engines will cost $1,000 or more to ship. This is not one of those. It's a light, compact engine. It's not on some big pallet. So for this engine, we said $500. It's probably the cheapest engine we can possibly ship here. So we did save a little there, but there was just a lot of stuff that was kind of bigger. The trunk, the bumper, the seats. Even though these seats are kind of, you know, a smaller one, we didn't sell it with the rears. I think overall, this is a volume-based $3,500.
Transitioning to the next cost, selling fees, which we always just do a blanket 10%, $2,516.
And one thing I will note, this is the most just kind of blanket, flat rate type expense here. Yes, it varies sometimes. Sometimes it shoots down. Actually, almost in all cases, it will shoot lower based on stuff that doesn't sell or something that might sell locally. Somebody comes and pays with a check or cash. But either way, for the purpose of this series, it's just fair to call it 10% because if this stuff sells on eBay like we just listed it on, that's what we're going to pay.
The last expense is the dead inventory. And I'm going to let Carrington talk about this because he can speak the best to why this car produced as many parts as it did.
So this is a weird one. We used to do these cars a lot. I mean, throw up some pictures, Dal, put it in the video. We used to do a ton of these cars, and I mean 3, 4 a week sometimes. BRZs in say 2018, 2019 were like Camaros are for us now. We did so many of them, and there was so much that we just threw away. If we got this car in as it sat in 2019, let's say, it would have been 60 parts. There was a lot that I was used to throwing away. Being that I haven't listed one in so long, I was looking at some of these parts like, why did Dalk keep this? Like, what are you doing, man? It's ingrained in me to throw some of this stuff away. All said and done, I only threw 2 parts away. I listed the rest of it, even though some of them are not hot sellers, like the drive shaft, the steering rack. There's a bunch of electrical modules that don't sell really well. A lot of those parts, we used to be able to get them so easily, and they didn't sell that well. The thing is, we haven't bought so many of these in a while that we don't have those parts anymore. So where we used to throw them away, now we're going to keep those, and I'm definitely going to list them, and I'm going to be happy about it. We have one of them now, and they're off that TS. So before they were essentially just written off, thrown into the scrap dumpster, now they actually provide some value. That's where you can make the case for buying an oddball car like this. If you don't have any of the stuff on the shelf, you're going to be able to retain a lot more. It's going to be, for all lack of better terms, fresh inventory. 4 years ago, if I listed this amount of parts off this car, dead inventory, I don't know, $5,000. Today, dead inventory, $2,000.
Grand total in expenses, $14,194.
Wow. Including the car.
Including the car, okay. Including the car. That's all, everything as we've laid it out in the video, which brings us to the theoretical net margin, $10,962. And now it is time for the all-important where it lies on the Salvage Story high scoreboard.
He almost beat you.
BB1. BB1. No, that Mustang's safe at number 1.
I told you guys it was going to be on the board. It's definitely on the board.
Wow.
Let's see where.
Look, I love making money. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy that Stancy McFlush just got kicked off.
How many people guessed Yeah, you got to get me out of the loser division. I belong little ballers. Put me up with little ballers because that's what this thing is. Who would have guessed that a Corvette would have gotten knocked off by a little BRZ? All right, so she's at least going number 4.
We can talk about the bigger issue here is that it didn't touch the Ford Mustang at number 1, and we got to get that off of there.
Even the mighty ZL1 couldn't do that, and that is right under where this BRZ is coming in. Number 3, bronze medal, baby.
Wow. Throwing a BRC. That's impressive.
A little $5,000 BRZ.
Yeah, I got to give it up. That is an awesome margin on a $5,000 car. Percentage-wise, it's probably, it might be the best car up there.
Certainly better percentage than a almost $23,000 ZL1 and a $8,500 Ford Legend.
Now, here's the problem. If we could buy cars like that all day, we would do it. I would do nothing but BRZs in here. The problem is I think we honestly got very lucky.
Carrington is right. The stars kind of align here with this BRZ. Honestly, the little bit that we pay attention to these cars still, I have seen non-TSs, just regular performance models, sell for more at auction. And you saw that some of these TS-only parts added up in a big way to get this car onto the Salvage Story high scoreboard, which I knew from the get-go. It took some convincing for Carrington, and now he has to admit it over and over and over again here on video, on the channel. But yeah, really perfect storm to get this thing onto the high score list. I don't think we're going to get a BRZ that's going to perform like this, honestly, anytime in the near future.
We will not. I have 2 things to add to this before we close it out. One, that belt doesn't look bronze to me. It looks more silver, so I suggest you put it back for, a real second place winner. 2, I am a little inspired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a Subaru guy anymore, but I used to be. My first cars were Subarus. Honestly, I started this business on Subarus, so I think I may go buy a Subaru now. It just so happens that a viewer reached out, and he has a wrecked Subaru of his own. I don't think it's gonna end up on that leaderboard. That's just my hunch. But I think it's a moneymaker, and who knows? We'll see. It also happens to be the same exact year, color, and model as my second Subaru.
Well, I can't say that that's the type of inspiration that I was trying to, instill in Carrington. More Subarus in the shop doesn't really sound that great, but I guess it might be fun. Let us know down in the comments if you guys enjoy these oddball type cars that we're mixing in with the normal LS Coyote content and now SRT that seems to be dominating the feed.
Porsche, or are we just leaving the Porsche stuff out? What are we doing here?
Yeah, another one that, just isn't my cup of tea. But one way or another, hope you guys are enjoying the content. We have plenty more fun stuff in store, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Keep hating those Nissan Jukes.